Hello, everyone. We wanted to welcome you today, and we are so glad to have you here with us from Waggle Live. My name's Tim. I'll be your moderator for today. A little bit about me. I'm a lifelong dog owner and lover, and have spent many years training dogs. I've raised puppies, and I've worked with a variety of different rescue dogs as well. I've also worked professionally as a service dog trainer and an assistant trainer with various law enforcement and search and rescue canine teams. Today's live Ask Me Anything is all about separation anxiety, something that we all care about and many of us have struggled with over the years. Even when we're doing everything right, sometimes things just don't seem to go the way we want them to. This is completely normal. The good news is that you can help your dog feel calm, confident, and comfortable when you're not there with them. In today's live session, we're going to explore what separation anxiety really is, why it happens, and what actually works to support your dog. As you're joining us, please drop your dog's name in the comments, say hello, and tell us where you're watching from. We are really fortunate today to have a top-notch expert with us. Jamie Bozzi has over 25 years of helping dogs overcome anxiety. A little bit about Jamie. She's a certified professional dog trainer and canine behavior consultant and has extensive experience helping dogs and their families. She's worked with hundreds of dogs struggling with separation anxiety and other behavior challenges. She specializes in helping dog parents understand the root of their dog's behavior, not just managing the symptoms. Because let's be honest, sometimes it's not just about training the dog, but it's about training us as the human owner as well. She's a subject matter expert for the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers and has helped to create and review the National Dog Training Exam questions, and she holds multiple excellent credentials, including Certified Professional Dog Trainer in Knowledge and Skills Assessment, Certified Professional Behavior Consultant, Karen Pryor Academy Certified Training Partner, an Associate Canine Dog Behavior Consultant, and a counseling certificate from the Gene Donaldson Dog Training Academy. Jamie is also very well known as an expert in scent work and dog sports and has served as a judge for the AKC and USCSS scent competitions and is a certified instructor for nose work. She travels extensively teaching classes, hosting events, and presenting at various national dog training and scent detection conferences across the United States. Her approach is grounded in clarity, realistic expectations, and small, actionable changes you can implement at home, which is exactly what she'll share live during this session on separation anxiety. Jamie, we are so thrilled to have you with us today.
Hi, Tim. I'm so happy to be here with the Waggle community and to talk about separation anxiety. Thank you so much.
Well, so I guess you're all kind of wondering, what are we going to accomplish today? What's the session going to look like? Well, first, Jamie's going to explain to us a little bit about what separation anxiety is, why it happens, and what dog parents often misunderstand. Then we have a set of pre-submitted questions that we're going to go over that will answer many of the questions that I'm sure you all have in your minds right now. After that, we're going to go live to answer any additional questions that our viewers might have. Stick around until the end, though, because we're going to be sharing a special code that includes an exclusive discount offer from Waggle Live today. In the meantime, please continue to drop your comments or concerns in the comment question, and our Waggle team will go through those, and we'll get to as many questions as we can. Jamie, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Please tell us a little bit about separation anxiety and, how we as pet parents can try and deal with that.
Thank you so much, Tim. So separation anxiety is actually quite common. It's called separation anxiety, but another name that's being more frequently used now is separation distress. And this affects up to almost 20% of the approximately 78 million dogs in the United States. So it is fairly common. And then let me go in to talk about what separation anxiety actually is. It's basically a serious emotional problem when the dog becomes panicked when the owner leaves. So this is very similar to a panic attack in humans. And dogs may express this panic in a variety of ways. And I'm going to share with you some of the most common symptoms. So see if you recognize some of these. And the dog could display all of these symptoms or just a few of these symptoms. There's about 10, sorry. So one of the most common ones is whining and pacing as you prepare to leave, dilated pupils, panting or drooling, sweaty paw pads. They'll actually leave an imprint on the ground, trembling or shaking, nonstop barking or howling. This is usually when you're not present, when you're gone. House soiling, also known as inappropriate elimination. A dog that was once perfectly potty trained, it may just appear that he's forgotten. Destructive chewing or digging, and this usually happens around exit or entranceways, door jambs, baseboards, even window panes. Appetite suppression. Dogs generally won't eat when you're gone. And injurious attempts to get out of the house or the crate. So most common is they may injure their toes or their feet or their teeth or their mouth trying to escape.
Gotcha. Thank you for those. That's very insightful. And, I find it interesting that some of those are symptoms and things that we may not even realize are going on. And that's where I think, we have this great tool, which is one of the things that we're going to be talking about today, is this Waggle camera. And, we'll talk about it a little bit more as we go on here. But the Waggle camera is a great tool to be able to watch some of that happen, because if you can't see it, you obviously can't be in the room when this is happening because it's separation. It's when you're not there. But the Waggle camera allows you to watch either live or recorded activity that happens. So it helps us to identify probably some of those symptoms that you just mentioned.
Absolutely. And so there's a difference between, this is a common question as well, a difference between separation anxiety and what I like to call FOMO, fear of missing out. We really call it frustration intolerance, but FOMO is a nice way to remember it. So remember, separation distress is like a panic attack, but frustration intolerance, or FOMO, that's really when the dog sort of gets agitated or upset because they're just not getting what they want. And so sometimes those symptoms can look similar. They can mimic one another. But the difference is separation distress, it's more excessive and it goes on for a longer period of time. And where frustration intolerance or fear of missing out, that is short-lived. It doesn't occur and it doesn't happen as often, and it has a short, shelf life.
Gotcha. Okay, that's important to note, because certainly, some of those signs and symptoms that you mentioned earlier can certainly overlap with other things that might be going on in our dogs' lives. So that's important to remember the difference between the two.
Yeah.
Jamie, let me ask you this. Why do you think that it seems like separation anxiety is increasing lately among a lot of our animals?
That is an excellent question. So dogs are very social creatures, and those sudden absences can feel very unpredictable for them and cause stress. So, after the pandemic, many pets got used to constant human presence. And so that immediate shift to having the human no longer be there, that was really stressful for a lot of dogs. Urban lifestyles, smaller spaces, crowded communities, and even less outdoor exposure. So some of that loss of structured access to that mental and physical stimulation, those games and fun problem solving, on the mental side, and more like outdoor stuff on the physical side. So all of those things have contributed to some of this separation anxiety. We're seeing these increases in the anxiety.
Okay, so in a way, what I'm hearing, at least in some of that, is we've actually set our own dogs up for a little bit of failure, in just because of the natural lifestyles that we have to live as humans. We are kind of, after the pandemic and things like that, we were stuck. Many of us going, back to in office hours and things like that, and
Yeah.
less at home hours. Kids were home, from school, learning at home, and now all of a sudden everybody's just vanishing for 8+ hours a day, and the dogs don't really understand that, do they?
Yeah. They have to learn how to live in a human world. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jamie, are there any breeds that you have found are more likely to suffer from separation anxiety?
I get that question a lot, and I'll tell you what the science says. So it's not breed dependent at all.
Okay.
And it's also not related to being male or female. So that doesn't have anything to do with it. But I can share with you the contributing factors. And again, this is science based. There's about 15 contributing factors. So I'll read some of these off. Dogs from homes with single adults are 2 to 3 times more likely to develop separation anxiety. Many separation distress dogs also have some type of noise phobia. They can have a
Okay.
sound or noise fear. Multiple instances of rehoming, although sometimes it can just be one rehome. And then I'm going to go into some of the things that puppyhood sort of affects. So illness or malnutrition during puppyhood can affect it.
Interesting.
Singleton puppies, so that's puppies there's only one puppy in the litter. Removal from the litter too young, and that can be anywhere, before 5 to 6 weeks of age. Air shipping in cargo, flying the dog, particularly during puppyhood, can be traumatic for some dogs and cause distress later. And then we're back to the pandemic stuff, never being left alone, and then all of a sudden there's humans are absent. Any changes in the dog's lifestyle, so say death of a family member, animal or human, addition of a new family member, animal or human, moving to a new home, change in schedules, again, returning to work after, being home for a while. We see it also with maternity leave, like everybody's sort of home and then everybody goes back to work. That can cause some stress. Even a traumatic event. So like maybe something weather related, like a tornado, a storm, a robbery. Seizure disorders are another common factor. And the last one
Interesting.
I would say is old age or pain related can also cause some of this separation distress.
Okay, that's an interesting list, because some of those certainly, I feel like we as the owners have some control over, but some of them we don't. And it's kind of it's a careful dance that we have to do as our, as the owners, and the people that care for our dogs, to make sure that we're giving them the best life possible. And certainly some of those things we can. And I know I certainly identify with a few of those, because I did get a puppy that was cargo air shipped to me when it was a puppy, and did well, thankfully. But and thankfully it was my wife and I, and we were able to really give him a lot of extra attention and loving, and when he got with us, and our schedules worked to allow us to really be able to kind of bounce back and forth, so he wasn't alone too often. But certainly there's a lot of us out there as dog owners that don't have a lot of control over some of these things. And again, this is where I think information is our friend. So are there signs and symptoms that pet parents can miss when they might be dealing with this kind of an issue of separation anxiety?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of those signs are really subtle. The dog could be following us around a lot, could be under our feet. A lot of the dogs will show some worrisome behavior just as you are getting ready to leave. They start to watch you very carefully as you pick up your keys and put on your shoes. And you can see the signs of like they're going, I'm not sure what's happening. Another way is sometimes the dogs are not okay, like in a crate or some kind of confined space for a very short period of time. Even that they have a hard time dealing with. So that can also be a subtle sign that that separation distress may start to occur.
Gotcha. Interesting. And I find it interesting, because one of the themes that I feel like that you've hit on now is, you talk about the singleton puppies. You talk about a puppy being removed from its mother, maybe a little young, following the owner around the house. I think one of the things that we have to remember is that, for the most part, dogs are pack animals. And, when we bring them into our home, we are their pack. And again, kind of going back to some of the issues that we talked about is, they don't understand. They see their pack mate walk out the door, and they're not quite sure what's going on. So, I see a lot of those puzzle pieces kind of coming together to have this separation anxiety concept make a lot more sense to me now.
Yeah.
So, do you have any ideas, just in general, that we can kind of share with our viewers today on ways that might be helpful to cure separation anxiety?
Yes. So we modify behavior. We're modifying, that's an emotional state. That panic is an emotional state, panic attacks. And so we want to try to help the dog feel more secure when left alone. So here's some of the things you can think about doing. And remember, this always depends on the severity and what kind of symptoms you're having, and how severe those symptoms are that the dog is experiencing. But a big one is play out of sight games. And that can just be as simple as, like, you just sort of disappear behind the bathroom door or the bedroom door and then appear again, right? You make it sort of a fun game. You want to play these out of sight games actually before you have to leave. So you don't want to be like, okay, let's play the game and then go to the store. No, we want to try to play these games when everybody's comfortable, everybody's home. Another way is, again, with those departure triggers. So humans tend to we're very habitual in how we do things, how we get up in the morning, how we leave the house. So it's very common that we do something the same way when we leave. I pick up my keys, I put on my shoes, I grab my purse or my bag, I put my coat on, right? We have a very specific way we sort of get ready to leave the house. And so those are called departure cues. But those cues are also triggering the dog's emotional state to go, oh no, she picked up her keys, I think she's going to leave me. So we can start to desensitize those departure cues or those departure triggers. And so again, we want to do this before you actually have to go somewhere. But what you can do is you can pick up your keys and sit on the couch. You can put your coat on. I know it seems silly, but you can put your coat on and your shoes and go make a cup of tea, right? You're not leaving the house. So the dog starts to see, oh, the keys don't mean she's leaving. Oh, when she puts her coat on, she doesn't always leave the house. So that can really help decrease some of the dog's anxiety. And again, everything that I'm mentioning before means we want to spend the time playing these games before you actually have to go to work or before you actually have to run that errand. Spend the time when everybody's home, the dog is more calm, relaxed, and comfortable. And then you can start to gradually increase that time. So you can play the out of sight games, you can desensitize those departure cues, and then you can gradually start to, increase the time. Keep the initial absences really short, just like a few seconds, and then you can do a few minutes. And if your dog appears comfortable and he can do maybe a few minutes, then you can gradually start to add time, maybe even work up to running an errand, going out of the house, going to the mailbox, coming back, going out to the car, getting something, coming back. And actually, really the best way to do this is using a camera. It is really crucial, and it is the number one way we start to see signs of stress is by using the camera.
Okay, great tip. And again, that's why this Waggle camera could be such a great tool for folks that are dealing with this. When they're practicing some of these sessions, like you're suggesting, if they want to walk out to the mailbox, as they're walking out, they can bring that live feed up on their phone and take a look at what their dog's doing. Is the dog trying to look out the window? Is the dog standing at the door? Is the dog starting to scratch or try and do something that could be destructive? And I imagine if they see that, your suggestion would be to pop back inside before it escalates any further and kind of interrupt that process. Is that accurate?
Yep, correct. Yep. And in real time, you can see everything that's happening, exactly when it starts to happen, and you can interrupt it and help the dog reduce that stress.
Okay. And I would also think that it might be useful because, you can start to maybe even recognize some of your own cues that maybe you weren't picking up on,
Yes.
because as you said, we humans, we tend to be habitual creatures, but I don't think we always realize that our habits are as ingrained as they are. And if the camera's set up in the right spot, you might be able to go back and view that recording later on and see what you're doing to say, oh, wait a minute, I need to here. I remember Jamie said, practice this beforehand. So, I'm going to take, and it doesn't seem like a lot of those things seem like you could probably do them in really just 2 or 3 minutes.
Yep.
A couple times a day. And, I think if you were to do that, it seems like you might really help to break your pup's reaction from the negativity.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So let me ask you another question. If my dog barks a lot, obviously that's something that I might hear from my neighbors, or, if you're an apartment dweller, you might be getting a nasty note from management. Any suggestions what we can do in that sort of a situation?
Yeah. So the barking, again, that depends. When does it start? The camera will tell you that. And then how long is the dog barking for? Remember, if it's not excessive, if it's just maybe a few minutes and they calm down, remember that's the frustration intolerance, not separation anxiety. If it's excessive and it goes on and on, then you want to start implementing some of those out of sight games. And again, the camera is invaluable and it is critical to helping the dog get through that.
And let me ask you this, because one of the unique features about the Waggle camera is that not only are you able to watch it live to see what's going on and get the recorded blips, but there's also an audio capability to it. Can you just talk to us a little bit about maybe how that could, that for some dogs that might be useful, maybe not all dogs, but how maybe sometimes that could be useful to interrupt some of this as well.
Yeah. And for some dogs, hearing your voice is very soothing and calming. So you could start to talk to them, let them know you're going to be back in just a few minutes, And so for some dogs, that does help them, just being able to hear you is soothing and calming.
Okay. And I'm just kind of thinking that I could see where some dogs might be a little taken aback by that too, because they're hearing your voice and they're not quite sure where it's coming from. But I'm just thinking back to something that you said earlier and thinking that, you could kind of potentially incorporate that into the hide and seek game,
Yep.
and see how it might work too. And, even if your dog had a little bit of an odd reaction at first, you might be able to actually incorporate that and make them appreciate that as an additional feature to use too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could use a cue or a word that says, during the out of sight exercises and games, oh, oops, coming right back. Oops, see you soon. Right. And then you could say that on the camera so the dog could hear you and go, oh, she's coming right back. So
Okay.
that's a positive association with that word and that sound, and the audio would be great. Mm-hmm.
Great tip. Thank you so much for that. And I think that kind of segues into our next question too, because the next one is, if my dog destroys things while I'm gone, any ideas what I could do to maybe help try and prevent or stop that damage?
Yes. So it depends on what the dog is destroying exactly, what specifically, and then how long after you leave does that destructive behavior start and begin. And again, the camera is invaluable and crucial to that because that will give us a live in real time when it's starting to happen. Some dogs will start to destroy immediately. Some dogs will show some type of distress behavior before the destruction starts, and that's why the camera is key, is because you can see what's leading up to before the destructive behavior, and we can intervene and help the dog.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And another common question that I know, I've had dogs that absolutely love the crate, some that don't always love the crate. Would you suggest generally, crate training my dog for when I'm going out?
Yeah. So that's a good question. I think it depends on the dog. And a crate is a confinement area. So we can be very creative when we say confinement area. Confinement area could be a crate, a playpen, an X pen, a baby gate. It could even be a small space like a room. And if you plan to use a crate or a confinement area, you just have to be sure that your dog is happy and sort of relaxed in the space before you leave him alone in it. So you want to practice using that confinement area again while you're home. A stronger crate is not the answer. We want to make sure the dog has a choice. You can actually play crate games or confinement games with dogs, teaching them how to get in and out of them. That can be really fun, and you build the positive association with the confinement space. You can also start to feed your dogs meals and provide them access to really fun toys and mental stimulation puzzles in a crate or confinement area. That really helps them, again, generate a more positive association with that area. But yeah, they just have to be properly trained to do that. And I think you can through some fun games.
Okay. And again, it seems like that might be something that would be useful as you're doing that, to utilize the camera. You could kind of just maybe disappear around the corner,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of see, is the dog, nosing
Yes.
at the crate? Is the dog starting to paw right away? And again, having the capability of having that camera view lets you interrupt that process before it escalates, and the dog starts to associate that crate with something negative.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Cameras are invaluable for all of this.
So let me ask you this, because this was a question that came up from someone before we started the session today. But does having a second dog help with separation anxiety?
Yes, that's a great question, but the answer is no.
Okay,
Separation distress is really an emotional disorder that has to do with the attachment to the human and no other animal, only the human.
gotcha. Interesting. Okay. And another one that came up was, can a well-trained dog or an independent dog develop separation anxiety? Is it one of those things that you get the dog and either they have it or they don't, or can it be something that develops, over time?
Yes, so even a well-trained, well-behaved dog that never had any issues or any behavioral issues can absolutely experience separation distress. So again, remember those contributing factors we talked about? There were like 15 of those. So any change in life events, normal aging, right? And it's some of those things that we can't prevent, like you said. Yeah, I mean, the dog's going to naturally age and stuff happens in life that we can't really foresee or control. And so all of those things can sort of affect separation anxiety.
Gotcha. It makes a lot of sense, especially when you think, just like us humans, as we age, we change. We might be real friendly sometimes and not as friendly others, and that's just kind of it's the natural course of aging. There's changes that go on that we have to kind of pay attention to. So
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. Would you suggest that having the recorded clips under live video is helpful to understand different patterns and even potentially share some of that information with trainers if if you're engaging with a trainer?
Yes, absolutely. So in fact, the camera is the best way to work with separation anxiety and to work with separation distress. You can see exactly when the dog is starting the behavior. You can see everything that's leading up to it. And again, to your point, I love what you said. We can see what we're doing. Is there anything that we're doing specifically that we were unaware of that's causing the dog to now sort of start to panic a little bit? So cameras are invaluable, extremely crucial, and you can share that with the trainer, the force-free trainer, the positive reinforcement trainer. You can share that with the veterinary behaviorist. I mean, it takes a community, and there's all these people here to help us, and that video is invaluable. Everybody can watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that's a great point, and all the different people that could really gain valuable insight from having these recorded clips, which again is a great reason to think about getting one of these cameras. And it's I think it's important to note that these cameras are very mobile, so that you can pick them up, move them from room to room. I actually use mine in the car a lot of times. If
Me
if I
too.
have the dog in the car,
Yep.
I'll just pop it up, and it makes me feel better.
Yep.
And I'm sure we talk about how sensitive dogs are, and if I'm anxious, the dog's going to pick up on that. So if I'm not anxious and I know I have that camera available to me, I think the dog senses that too, even if I'm just running in the store for a few minutes. So
And that's a really important point, is that's helping us feel calm too.
yep, because and I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, and but even with this question that we just talked about, with using the recorded clips with trainers and vets and things like that,
Mhm.
sometimes it's not always about training the dog, but it is about training us as the human, isn't it?
Yes. And again, it's giving us invaluable information that we're learning from to help the dog. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I remember when I first really started training puppies for the first time, and I went to some classes. That was one of the first things that one of the trainers that I worked with said. It said, to take your instincts out of it for a minute and just listen to what they're saying. And
Mhm.
sometimes you have to kind of rewire your own brain a little bit, and it made things go a lot smoother for me. So
Yes. Visuals are so important, and visuals give us so much information and educate us on things that we weren't aware of.
absolutely. So let me ask you. Let's kind of bounce to a different type of question now. What type of enrichment tools, maybe things like snuffle mats, lick mats, taking a Kong and freezing some treats in there, or scent games, are any of those that you found are either more or less effective in RVs or other situations like that?
Yeah. So all enrichment tools can be helpful. The key to using any of the enrichment tools, and I like all of those. I like the snuffle mats, the lick mats, the Kongs, scent games, and they're effective in homes, RVs. I would say it's really important to So if it's truly separation anxiety and separation distress, those enrichment tools generally won't fly with the dog. However, if you start getting the dog used to these things before you have to leave, so if if you're home watching a movie, if you guys have dinner and then the dog is getting the snuffle mat or the licky mat, right now we're creating those positive associations with those enrichment tools, and they can be used later on when you're doing the out of sight exercises. But first, we want the dog to have really positive associations and feel calm and relaxed, engaging with those items when you are home. And then gradually we can start to use them as you leave, but we just have to be creative and thoughtful on how we do that. So food is so important because, we talked about one of those symptoms was appetite suppression. And so food and eating is very pleasurable for dogs. And it's a great, we use food as a tool to gauge a dog's internal state, to gauge their emotional state. If a dog will eat, they're usually generally okay. If the dog suppresses appetite and won't eat, they're worried about something. So we can absolutely use these enrichment tools to help them.
Okay, great tips. Thank you so much for that. And folks, as you're listening, please, again, we've had a couple great questions pop up in the chat that we'll get to here shortly. But if you do have questions, please feel free to pop them in the comment section, and we'll get to as many of those as we can today. So Jamie, as we're kind of maybe getting ready to wrap up some of the pre-submitted questions, we have a few left, but are there any common misconceptions and things like that you would kind of just want to throw to our audience today to keep in mind?
Yeah, so common misconceptions I would say with separation distress are a second dog will help, right? We already talked about that. It's the association with the human, not the animal. So a second dog or a second pet will generally not cure separation anxiety. Another common one is tiring the dog out. And while the old adage, a tired dog is a good dog, is true, again, separation anxiety is often an emotional issue. And so when a dog panics, that adrenaline kicks in. And so even if they were tired, they'll still show a lot of those symptoms. Another common misconception is providing the enrichment toys or the enrichment tools. Again, they can work, but they have to be introduced early on, and there's sort of a way you introduce those tools into the out of sight exercises to make them work. But just throwing out a frozen Kong and then leaving often creates a negative association. They're like, oh my God, the Kong means you're leaving. So there is a better way to do that. Panic and stress is a really big feeling. And so we want to help dogs feel better. And we can do this through helping them just sort of understand that we're coming back.
Got you. Great. Thank you so much for that. That's really been helpful. Let's transition over now to some of the questions that have popped up in the comment section. So, some of these we may have touched on already, but maybe there's a few of them that maybe haven't. So, the first one is they have a rescue dog who suffers from separation anxiety. How can they make life easier for her?
So the first question I would ask is it really separation anxiety, or is it fear of missing out? Because that would be two different things. But again, start with some of those out of sight exercises. Either way, those are really fun games to play with the dog. Something very simple as, disappearing behind a door and coming back, and then slowly, gradually increasing that time.
Great. Thank you so much for that. It makes a lot of sense. The next one comes from Rachel R. And she tells us Ellie Mae, who is her pup, and she went through some big changes last year. There was a divorce, a move to a new house. Her separation anxiety has worsened significantly to the point where she'll actually have a seizure after about an hour of being alone. So Rachel has decided that she pretty much tries to take her everywhere that they go, or to have a dog sitter if she's gone for more than a few minutes. That's obviously a lot to try and demand. So any ideas with maybe what Rachel could do to try and help Ellie Mae through this, and maybe even guide, from a, I think we talked about it a little bit, but maybe guide from a medical diagnosis what might be going on as well.
Yeah, I would say anytime you're seeing a seizure, that's a veterinary visit. So you definitely want to consult with a veterinarian to go over some of the answers for the seizures, because I think that has to be addressed first. That's a physical problem, and that's something a vet can address.
Absolutely. And I think too, as we kind of pointed out, that's where potentially, having the waggle camera available, because then now you have that footage that you can show the veterinarian, because seizures are tough because you can't always if you don't know exactly what precipitates them, there's
Yep.
different types of seizures. There might be different activities involved. There might be different noises involved, and having these live the recorded video might be really helpful for the veterinarian to move forward.
Absolutely, because they also need to know how long the seizure lasted. And so the video will give you that critical information, and that really helps the vet more diagnose what's happening.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So the next question that we have is, how important do you view departure and arrival rituals when managing anxiety in a smaller living space?
Yeah, I think the departure cues are always important. And again, you just want to kind of keep everything low key. But again, that's the beauty of the small living space. You wouldn't need as many cameras.
Absolutely.
Probably
And the
too.
fact that this is so mobile, you can move it around, and it has magnets, it has all that different stuff. So you can pretty much always find a way to set this camera up, can't you?
Absolutely. And that's what I like about it. But yeah, even departure cues in a small space, those are important. So you can write them down, see what you're actually doing, then use the camera that will really show you the visual of what your departure cues look like. And then you can start to desensitize those.
Makes a lot of sense. Great. All right, let's jump to the next one. So here we have the rescue came from an abusive background, which is always tough. She follows her owner from room to room and can't settle unless she's actually in physical contact with her owner. She's fine when she's away, but when she's at home, she needs to be that physical touch. So, any suggestions, maybe, or tips that we could throw out to
Yeah.
this situation?
Yeah. So again, I think this is where the out of sight exercises can be really helpful. And again, super gradual. It could, and sometimes it doesn't even have to be out of sight or behind the door. You could even start out with just taking a step away and returning immediately. Taking a step away, returning immediately, and giving them, some kind of food reward. Also, if the dog is very Velcro like that, you could see, will the dog eat? Will the dog engage with a snuffle mat next to you? Right? And then see if you could slowly start to move your body away from that very enticing snuffle mat that the dog is working on. So that can be very helpful as well.
Okay, so when we're if that with the snuffle mat, start, and then just stay right there with it, and then maybe just increase by a foot or so,
Mhm.
and I would say, I'm just kind of guessing here, but tell me if I'm right. If we're going to do that, I would say, it's one of those things that you want to increase that distance probably pretty slowly, given the severity of some of the symptoms that it seems like might be going on here.
Yes. And if the dog is eating and engaged in the food, when you come back, add some food to it. When you come back, drop some more cookies on that snuffle mat. So you coming back, not only are you coming back, but more food is happening. So it's just a win-win.
Gotcha. Makes a lot of sense. Okay. Now let's look. Looks like we have one from Kelly F here. This one's a little different. This is a new one to me. I've never heard this before, but she's been told to just let her dog cry it out so she learns. But when she cries, it sounds genuinely distressed, not out of stubbornness. How can she tell the difference between a behavioral protest and true separation anxiety?
Right. Well, the only way to do that is with a camera. Right. So that you'll know how long she's doing it. But do we really want to put her in that kind of distress? I would say, again, with the enrichment tools and the snuffle mat, and just kind of stepping away and just start to do that gradually so they learn you come back. I don't think there's really any reason to let her cry it out. That's kind of an old school mentality. We don't really have to put the dog in a stressful or stress them out to kind of see the difference. So I think you could start with some of these easy exercises and just build on that so she never really gets distressed.
It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I agree that when I saw the cry it out, I kind of thought back to, see, it's a problem that, nothing against the person that suggested that, but, it seems like is a little bit of a dated suggestion. And again, one where I think the camera could come in really useful, because you might be able to help gauge, what's causing that. And, was it out the door and, 2 minutes later, or did the dog next door start barking, or, something like that too. So. All right, let's see. Next up, we have Adam Fisher, and Adam says his dog doesn't bark when he leaves. He just shuts down. He just lies by the door and won't move until they returns. It breaks his heart, obviously, and it's also is that, would you consider that to be separation anxiety, or is he just used to me going in and out the door and knows that that's where he's going to come back?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that's still a low level form of separation anxiety, but he's not doing anything destructive. He's not, making any vocalizations. Um, I would be curious, like how long he's done this behavior for, and has it gotten better or worse? But again, if he's not destructive, if he's not vocalizing, you could still use a camera to see again how long does he do this, and what does he do. Some dogs will get up, some dogs will go back to the down position, some dogs will leave, walk away, come back to the door. What exactly is he doing? The camera will give us that information. But again, I still think we can use, and this may be a dog we can use these enrichment tools with. Give him something to do when the owner's gone, because he's not being destructive. Maybe we can give him something that's a little more self-soothing, and then we can watch him on the camera.
Okay. And I'm just thinking out loud here. You tell me, maybe I'm wrong, and feel free to tell me if so. I don't mind. You can't be right till you're wrong a few times occasionally. So, but maybe this dog would benefit from the audio capability of the camera as well. Just to, I mean, since we are dealing with a low level here, certainly if we could maybe try it out and see how it would go, and it's either going to be helpful or not helpful. And, obviously we would stop using it if it wasn't helpful, but, it might, if the camera was set up, around the corner or something like that, you could kind of use that voice call to just see what kind of engagement you can get with the dog as well. Right.
Yep. I think it's worth a shot. Yeah. You could definitely try that.
Great. Next up, we have a question from Raja. Should we exhaust the dog before leaving them at home?
Remember, that was one of the misconceptions. A tired dog is a good dog. Will tiring out a dog help? If it's true separation distress, exercise will not tire the dog out. That adrenaline will kick in and they'll panic, and that panic attack will still happen even when the physical body is exhausted or tired. If it's just FOMO, that will work, doing some nice vigorous exercise, and it's good for all of us, physical and mental stimulation. But if it's just a dog with frustration intolerance, some good exercise may help him relax more at home.
Okay. So again, it kind of helps us, maybe experimenting a little bit might help us, decide whether we are dealing with separation anxiety or that FOMO, like you talk about.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, we have, how long is too long to leave a dog with separation anxiety alone, especially if you're traveling or sightseeing? Is there a right, or, is there a good answer for that?
Nope. It depends. And again, the camera will give you that information. Everybody's different. Just like humans are different. Everybody has a different, we have different likes and dislikes and idiosyncrasies. Dogs are the same way. So what's, long for one dog may not be long for another dog. And again, that camera is going to give you specific time, and you'll be able to see in real time what's happening. And if the dog does become worried, exactly when does that begin?
Absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. So that way, is it, the 30 seconds after I walked out the door, or is it 2 hours or 4 hours after I walk out the door?
Right. That's important information for us to kind of help the dog feel more secure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Next up, we have a question from James H. And James asks us here, his 4-year-old Roddy was fine being alone until they had a baby about 6 months ago. Now, if they step out, the dog paces, drools, and scratches the door nonstop. It's exhausting managing a newborn and the anxiety of a dog in this situation. Any suggestions how they can balance both without making him feel replaced?
Yeah. So again, good question. And remember, this is a life change. There was a new addition to the family, a new human addition. So you can see that change may have created some distress. So again, it's the really simple, try to do the out of sight exercises. You could use some of the enrichment toys while you're doing that. Be curious to see, again, if the dog would eat. If the dog will eat, sometimes we can gauge that emotional state that way. Also, if you're feeling really at the end of your rope and you're just not moving that training needle, right? That may be a time to talk to a veterinarian about medication. So there are some very good medications on the market for separation anxiety. And just like humans, right, when we take Prozac, we're supposed to do it in conjunction with behavioral therapy. So it's same with dogs. If sometimes the medications that your vet will prescribe will help move that training needle. So if you weren't making the progress, it can help you make that progress faster. And again, a camera is going to be key because the vet's going to want to know, when does this exactly occur and for how long does it last? That's also going to tell them how to give that medication.
Gotcha. And it also seems like that might be a good one to do some of those little mini training sessions like we talked about as well,
Yes.
where intentionally just step out for 15, maybe it's only 15 or 20 seconds to start, but then over time you gradually try and reinforce that. Let me ask you a question about that though, just to help clarify for our audience today. When you're doing that, should you be careful about how excited you get when you're coming back in that door?
Yes, you want to keep everything low key. No super high cheerleader voice. We don't want to get the dogs more excited or more aroused. We want to keep everything really low key. Hi, nice to see you again. We're back. Oh, we love you so much. We'll be right back. Keep everything mellow.
Okay. Great point, because I know I tend to do it. I'm probably more excited than my dog is sometimes to see me. So I know I probably could inadvertently feed into that if I'm not careful. All right. We have a couple other questions that have popped up. So next up we have Bala has a multi-poo and she's very clingy as a puppy. They've had her for about a month, and the question is that if she's not right there with her, she starts whining and barking. She doesn't want it to turn into separation anxiety when they have to leave her alone in the house. It's been difficult to get her to even stay in a playpen area for more than 10 minutes. Any suggestions about how they can help develop the pup's self-esteem so that being alone doesn't turn into more severe separation anxiety?
Yeah. So this is where you might be able to try some of the enrichment tools in the playpen area. The other thing is consider feeding sometimes some of the dog's meals using the enrichment tools, and start that when you are home or when you are near them or next to them. Again, this is something where you could start feeding meals inside the confinement area to help. And then again, food is relaxing and calming for dogs. And so if we can get her on a nice regiment there, then maybe we can start to also do those out of sight exercises and come back and add to the snuffle mat and add to the, enrichment tool that's already in there.
Okay, so it seems like a lot of the same tools would work here, and we're just kind of really initiating them before we get to that full blown concept of potential separation anxiety.
Right.
All right. Next up, we have a question from Ben. And in Ben's situation, he adopted a puppy about 2 years ago during travel to Lanka. The pup is incredibly attached and starts shaking the moment they pick up their keys, which I think we talked about. They have a hybrid work situation, but on office days, the pup refuses to eat and howls for hours. Obviously, as the owner, he feels very guilty for leaving her. He had to do a lot of work to get the license and bring her here. Any suggestions what he can do to try and help reinforce and her feeling safe, and maybe help separate that, get rid of some of that clinginess that the pup is experiencing?
Yeah. So again, that eating, right, is gauging that internal state. So she won't eat. And then we have the picking up the keys, which was part of the departure triggers. And again, if it's really, really severe, it's something to talk about your vet about, to see if medication would help. And then once that medication kicks in, then you could start doing some of the out of sight exercises, but so very gradually with her. Sometimes food we don't even use in the out of sight exercises. It's just enough to have you come back and to see you visible again. So we would start those really, 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 really tiny steps, like micro steps, to help her.
Okay, great point. I think because I think sometimes, again, we kind of get stuck in our own human minds and we think, okay, I'm going to practice this and we're going to do it for 10 minutes. But in a dog's lifespan, 10 minutes it could amount to what is the equivalent to us for years. And sometimes we really are just talking about maybe 20 or 30 seconds max to start, right?
Oh, yeah. Even a second. It can just turn around, face them, turn around, face them.
Okay.
Just a few seconds at a time, and we build up to a few minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Very helpful. Thank you so much for that. And it looks like we're going to be rounding out one of our last questions here that I'm seeing pop up. And Sue's question is: their dog has separation anxiety. He has gotten a little bit better. He is crated while they're gone because he can be destructive. Lick mats and chews have definitely helped him, but he has good days and bad days. Eventually, they would like to be able to uncrate him. How do you recommend that they would try and maybe incorporate the concept of not leaving him crated?
Yeah. So depending on the type of crate you're going to use, I would put a mat or a crate mat or a blanket inside the crate. You can then start to move that outside the crate and teach them that same calm, relaxed behavior on the mat or the crate mat or the blanket or whatever surface you want to use. And you could start creating those positive associations with the mat. And you can use the enrichment tools with that mat.
Great tip. And I'm going to throw one in here too, because I had it with pretty much all of my pups were crate trained over the years. And at one point I had eight dogs, which was a lot of crates set up in the house. So we did start to take some of them down, and we ran into a little bit of an issue with one of our pups. Because they each kind of had that, like, that was their crate. Like each one had one particular crate that was their spot. And when we took his down, he got so upset with us that we actually started having issues with him because we took it down. We ended up putting it back up. We just left the door open all the time, and he would go in and out as he pleased, but it was his safe space. So that might be something they want to, they could, incorporate leaving that door open, but maybe leave the crate up. And again, I think the camera could be real useful because they could see, is the dog going in there, and is that their safe space? And maybe in that case, they want to leave it up, even if the door's open.
Yes. And I think that's an excellent point. And crates are a really safe space for a lot of dogs. All my dogs are crate trained. And when I can't find them in the house, oftentimes they're just hanging out in their crate. They really love it. And it's sort of like when you're growing up as a kid and you have your own room, it's your space. You can decorate it and do whatever you want to it. And again, you can play crate games. Like we did those out of sight games. You can start to play crate games with your dogs where you teach them to go in, you teach them to come out, you teach them to go in and do like a 2-second downstay or a 5-second downstay and then release them. There's all these fun crate games you can play with dogs. If they can go through a tunnel into the crate, out of the crate, over a jump. Like you can do all these fun things with crates and make it a really fun place. But for a lot of dogs, they already love their crate. It's a really, really safe space for them. So that's a great point.
Great. Thank you so much for that. So as we're getting kind of ready to wrap it up here, folks, we're just going to give Jamie a last chance here to maybe give us a couple of key takeaways. And then we'll wrap up and we'll be sharing again. Stay tuned because we're going to be sharing that special exclusive discount code with you shortly here.
So I'd say key takeaways would be look for physical signs of distress, right? And a camera is key in seeing when the dog is beginning to look worried. You can observe them so you know exactly when it's occurring. Play out of sight games, right? That can just be disappear for a second behind a door, or maybe even just take a step away, a couple feet away and return. Again, camera would be key to that as you go more and more out of sight. And providing those enrichment puzzles, right? And remember, we want to start all of that while you're home, when everybody is chilling, relaxed, and watching a movie, having some popcorn. We want nice, calm, relaxed associations with all the enrichment tools. Because remember, eating and chewing are pleasurable for dogs and it's relaxing. So we want to kind of start to implement. And I will say the good news is that most dogs with separation anxiety do improve with proper treatment. And a very important part of that success, I can't stress enough, it's super crucial, are cameras. All of us trainers and behavior experts, we all use cameras, even the vets. And remember, you don't have to do this alone, right? At Waggle and our community, our goal is to help you. And we want to guide pet parents and give you helpful tools and resources to help you feel confident and calm when you're away and help your pet feel more secure. So thank you so much.
Great. Jamie, thank you so much. I think all those tips and tricks today that you've given us can really be helpful to a lot of our viewers today. To our viewers, if you didn't have a chance to write some of those down, don't worry. This session is being recorded, so you'll be able to go back and refer to it later. We want to thank you guys so much for joining us today on a Waggle Live. And as a thank you, we're going to be providing a special discount offer today for you to use towards this camera. And that discount code is going to be posted here momentarily. But I'll tell you what it is. It's CALM, CALM 55. CALM 55, and you can use that at mywaggle.com to get a great discount on these cameras so that you can incorporate it starting as soon as it ships out to you. Please give your pups an extra hug from us today. Visit mywaggle.com for more sessions. Follow us so you don't miss out on our next live session and start applying what you learned today. Your dog will thank you for it. And we hope you have the best and rest of the day, and spend some time with your pups and say hello to them for us. Thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone.